Creating cinematic animation is always a challenge, and makes them look realistic is even harder. However, there are some tricks to simplify the process for artists, especially when using Blender. With Blender you can apply most of these tricks directly in the software without needing other tools. And in this video we'll focus on one helpful trick for crafting cinematic animation. I'll be discussing matte painting, or more specifically 3D matte painting, also known as 3D compositing, depending on what you call it. So, I'm inside the Blender scene of this animation which you saw at the beginning, and to put it simply, with 3D compositing we can replace some elements with real footages. For instance, this ocean here isn't a water simulation, it's actually video footage I used in this animation. The same goes to the cliffs and mountains behind the shore, but the foreground is still made with 3D objects. So, roughly speaking, this scene can be split into two parts: the 3D foreground and the background, which uses matte painting techniques in 3D Compositor. This approach has two main benefits. First, it saves time. Creating an ocean with foam using VFX simulation would take a lot of effort. Second, if you don't have a powerful workstation, this method can help you create impressive animation even on your computer, as it uses far fewer resources and less render time while still delivering the great result. So let's take a look at how it works and how to use it to create cinematic animation in Blender. Let's begin with EEVEE, since it's faster and works well for 3D compositing, though I'll use cycles for the final animation. And I already have a foreground and lighting set up using just HDRI. You can see how fast it works in EEVEE, which allows me to quickly adjust all the necessary elements. And in this stage I'm not considering about how it looks. My focus is on seeing how it works in 3D scene. That's why I'm starting with EEVEE. Okay, let's start by adding the ocean to the scene, and I add a simple plane, scale it and place it behind my 3D space. I've already found some footage and photos for this animation, mostly free footages that's easy to find on Freestock's websites. I'll use ocean footage for this scene, so to do this I'll take a plane which I added and add a shader to it. And in the shader editor I drop this video footage and connect it to base color. And just like that we have an ocean, simply and easy. Important to enable auto refresh to see the ocean animation, and make sure to set the correct frame range. If we're using 250 frames on our timeline, we need to match this with 200 frames of the ocean footage. This ensures the footage plays throughout the entire timeline. It's important to double check this, especially before the final render, to avoid a freezing frame halfway through the animation. So, I want to use only the ocean from this footage, no sky or anything else, just the ocean. We can remove the sky directly in Blender with a few clicks. Go to Edit Mode, select this edge, and then, importantly, go to Option and enable Correct Face Attributes. It allows me to move the edge on the mesh while keeping the image or textures in proper proportions. So I move it like that, and the sky is removed from the footage. To enhance the ocean in our scene, we can use the same footage as an emission input in the shader. We might increase the strings to help control the footage appearance and better match it to the base 3D scene in terms of color and lighting. We will revisit this during the final stage in cycles, but for now it's important to adjust the ocean footage and start integrating it correctly into the 3D scene. If you look closely at this footage, it has a sharp edge on the horizon, which doesn't look realistic, right? It's clear that this is flat image and the ocean isn't a 3D object. But when we're working with it, we need to treat it as a full part of our scene, considering things like perspective. Far in the distance, the ocean should blend with the horizon. So in this case, we can fake this effect. To achieve this, I'll use gradient texture in the shader editor. With the gradient texture, I can create an alpha channel to soften the transition between the ocean and the sky, or in simpler terms, fade out part of the ocean. Using the mapping node, I adjust the position of this gradient to smooth out this sharp edge of the ocean. Something like this. I also add a color ramp to control the gradient texture more precisely. So let's use this created mask as an alpha. It already looks good, but we still need to fine-tune the position of this gradient texture. Now it looks right, no longer see the sharp horizon. Perfect. And now let's add the sky to make this effect look clear. Add another plane to the scene, scale it and place it behind the scene. This plane should cover the entire camera frame. I also have footage we can use in this animation, applying the same way we did for the ocean. So it's looking something like this. We also need to mirror this plane so the clouds move in the same direction as the waves. This is important, even though we are using different footages, they should follow the main logic of the scene. As we can see, the waves are moving in this direction, which suggests the wind is blowing in this way, so everything should move in the same direction. Now we can see the clouds are moving in the same direction as the waves, plus the ocean blends nicely into the horizon, even though it's just a plane, not a real 3D object. That's the essence of this method. We can create complex effects using simple techniques. Next, I want to add cliffs and mountains. I'll use the same approach, create a plane and place it somewhere here. I have a video footage with an interesting mountain, but even though it's a video, I'll use only one single frame from it. I just really like the shape of this mountain. You could use a simple photo as you wish for this. Just like with the ocean, we need to separate the mountain from the sky. While we used correct face attributes for the ocean, here we'll need a mask. You could use something like Photoshop to paint the mask, but I'm going to do it in Blender. So I open a new Blender file and switch to the Compositing workspace, then drop this image here. To isolate the mountain, we need an alpha channel. So we'll set the alpha. Clearly we need a mask for this alpha. So as we know, an alpha mask is originally black and white image. To create this, we need to convert this image to black and white. I'll use a color ramp because it allows us to select the right range to isolate the mountain. I need a pure black and pure white. I might even swap this right away, since I want to keep the mountain and remove the sky. Yeah, there we go. So let's use this as alpha. And as you can see, it removes the sky from the image. The shape might not be perfect yet, so to fix this, I'll add a erode node and adjust the border slightly, maybe to -1. Yeah, that looks much better. Now we have alpha channel, And as I mentioned, I only need one frame from this footage, so I'll save this frame as a PNG with alpha channel. If you need the entire footage with an alpha channel, you can render the animation and save it with the alpha channel. Then return to the main scene and let's replace original footage with this image. And use this created alpha channel. Yeah, just like that. We have a mountain in this scene. Nice. Just let's adjust the size of this plane so it's and doesn't distract us in 3D viewport. We need only mountain itself. So I also added another mountain here using the same method. Now let's move to the middle ground, where I will add also some cliffs, some large cliffs. And the approach is similar, but there is a key difference. I'll show you now. I want to use this photo, and I've already created a mask for it in Krita. Since the shape here is a bit complex, it might not be easy to isolate it just using color ramp in Compositing. Anyway, just like before, drop this image and connect it to the base color. I think I'll adjust the size a bit. Something like this, yeah. Then use the alpha. Yeah, we need to invert this alpha. Good. I think let's add hue saturation node to desaturate the image slightly, so it blends better with our scene. Now take a look. These mountains are far from the camera, so we don't really see fine details on them. A simple image works well for that, but this cliff is much closer to the camera, and we can see its details, right? And the problem is, it looks like a flat image, just place it in the 3D scene. I wanted the cliff's details to feel real, with light cast on shadows from them, even though it's just an image and not a 3D object. So we can create a normal map to simulate these details. And in Blender there is a deep bump add-on or script, I'm not sure, but it's free tools that can generate a normal map directly from the image. So I select my base color image, go to color to normal option and press generate normal map. And the add-on creates a normal map. So let's connect this normal map to normal input and see those difference. Without and with the normal map. While it will not turn a plane into 3D object, the normal will create shadows that highlight the cliff's details. Essentially, just like we use 3D objects for the foreground, for the middle ground we need a bit more details, and the normal map is a great way to achieve that. So let's take a look at what we've got. Yeah, since I'm working in EEVEE, we can play our animation easily. That's why I use EEVEE. It runs quickly in the 3D viewport, so we can see how the camera moves and how all these matte painting details appear in the camera correctly. Sure, it's not 30 frames per second, but it's definitely faster than cycles. But despite that, I will finish this animation in cycles. So let's pick a hero frame, probably one where the camera has stopped moving. Somewhere around here maybe. I will make some adjustments to the position of the mountains and cliffs to improve the composition. As you can see, for the final animation I switched to widescreen resolution, so I need to reposition some elements. By the way, notice the alpha effect on the ocean. If I disable this alpha, you can see this sharp edge on the ocean. But when I enable it, look how this ocean fades into the horizon. It's a small detail, but it really adds realism. Alright, it's time to switch to cycles for the final adjustments. While EEVEE is great and even looks realistic, I prefer how cycles handle atmosphere and volume. First, let's increase the contrast in the render, and I'm going to use Ajax viewport transform in the cinematic animation instead of filmic. Next, let's add the volume to this scene with a simple cube and principled volume shader. This is why I placed all these elements at different distance. It helps create a nice sense of depth with this volume. So, principled volume. I will lower the density and add a bit of emission. Not too much, just enough. By adjusting the color, we can set the atmosphere in this scene. You can see that even though these elements are just simple planes, they interact with this depth of volume, creating extra depth while still being basic planes. By the way, we can adjust these elements locally. For example, the ocean looks too blue compared to the rest of the scene, and we can use the hue saturation value node in the shade editor to tweak this color. Also, we can might add RGB curves to make this ocean more contrastly. Something like this, yeah. I will also make the sky deeper and more dramatic. Again, I can use RGB curves and adjust the curve to add contrast to the sky. So this way we need to bring all these elements together to match the overall color and tone of the main scene. It's a bit different from using 3D models in the scene, where we have the recolor and unify everything into a single palette. That's why this is matte painting technique, much like in Photoshop, where we can combine multiple images and add elements to create an art. Here it's a similar, but the difference is that this animation and Photoshop alone will not do this job, though the principle is the same. At the same time, this can be even more exciting, because with matte painting we can use unlimited libraries of images and video files, which often offer more variety than 3D model libraries. Even when considering modeling from scratch for a project, matte painting saves time. For example, in this scene the foreground used 3D models, while the background is matte painting, which greatly simplifies the task. Just imagine how messy this scene would be if everything was fully in 3D. Honestly, it's not always necessary to do everything in 3D. Sometimes it's smarter to use creative tricks like matte painting. So, the scene is looking great, and I would like to add some post-production effect right in Blender, of course. And to do this, I open Compositor and let's add color balance node. With this node we can add an overall color tone using gamma, and this is a more creative process, you know, and I think finding the right color is quite personal. So using lift we can make the shadow darker, while gain adjusts the highlights in the render. I also love using lens distortion node in Compositing. It creates a cinematic effect mimicking real camera lenses. Just enable the fit option in this node and add some dispersion. This gives a chromatic aberration effect, you know, which is something you often see in footages shot with the camera. So finally, I want to add a vignette effect, but for that I need a mask. And we can't paint masks directly in the 3D viewport or real-time compositor. So I'll do a render, maybe just a lower resolution, and switch to compositing. In the mask workspace, I'll create a simple circle mask, place it in the center of the render, maybe scale it a bit and add some feather to this mask. Something like this. Next, in Compositor, I select this created mask, I use it with color balance node, but invert it to darker edges of this render. This also adds depth to the animation, as you can see. Also, it's better to place the lens distortion node at the end of the compositing line. Post effects are always best applied at the end of compositing line. And as we can see, even though we used a lot of images, it looks quite realistic. Naturalist in these photos, of course. That's the point of this tutorial. It's not just about achieving a realistic image, but also about the workflow. Approach tasks more creatively. Sometimes a well-placed photo in background is enough to solve the problem. I love using this method, especially for commercial projects where time is matter, and matte painting saves a lot of time while delivering result with just a few clicks. So subscribe to my channel if you haven't already subscribed yet, and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to support my channel even further, I invite you to join my Patreon, where you can find masterclasses, tutorials, scenes, and materials from each tutorial. I hope it was useful for you, and see you in the next episode.